Hello everyone and welcome to this audio podcast. This audio podcast is part of the Spectra Dossier P2. This audio podcast is part of a SZtorm. This audio podcast is part of a Squadron. This audio podcast as part of a Storm Robotics production. In this audio podcast, we're looking at sort of the outcomes in regard to the education, in looking at education, the educational part or aspect of this period of the initiative and that took place in between 2013 and 2015, and this audio podcast will delve into looking at the outcome around the educational initiative or the educational sort of strategy. So this campaign highlighted the need to create educational packs to provide information about blood and organ transplantation to and amongst those in communities. Amongst communities, the educational packs would include literature and DVDs, for example, literature and DVDs, for example, to allow community champions to educate communities on specific topics. Formal training would be provided by a trained peer coordinator. One of the community champions working with one of the radio stations, Eugenia Radio, is and has now been involved in hosting in around involved in hosting sort of a sort of shows alongside an advisory panel. The future show will a future show would feature two or three panel members every month who would be guests on the radio station to discuss experiences and to answer questions from listeners. This would result in an ongoing awareness and promotion of the importance around blood and solid organ transplantation or donation in amongst communities. That draws this audio podcast to a close. This audio podcast as part of a Spectra Dossier P2. This audio podcast is part of a SZtorm. This audio podcast is part of a Squadron. This audio podcast is part of a Storm Robotics production.